future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. That quote from author Robert Greene feels especially relevant today as artificial intelligence is reshaping how we work, learn, and build our careers. While much of the AI conversation focuses on technology, productivity, and business outcomes, there's an equally important question. How do we prepare people to thrive in an AI-driven world? I'm your host, Ken Umansky, and today we're exploring the future of work, education, and workforce readiness in an age of AI. My guest today is Dr. Taniya Mishra, founder and CEO of SureStart, an organization dedicated to helping build the next generation of AI leaders. Dr. Mishra has spent more than 2 decades advancing artificial intelligence, earning over 50 patents in AI and machine learning, while holding leadership and innovative roles at organizations including AT&T Labs and Effectiva, an MIT Media Lab spinoff. She is widely recognized for her work in AI education, ethics, inclusion, and workforce development, and has been honored as a leading woman in AI by NASDAQ. Through SureStart, Dr. Mishra and her team are helping students around the world develop the skills, confidence, and AI fluency needed to succeed in a rapidly changing future. Taniya, welcome to Technology. I'm really delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ken, for having me on your podcast. I'm excited for our conversation.
Well, let's get started. Tell me about your career journey. My first question really is, tell me about your career journey and what ultimately led you to start SureStart.
Absolutely. So I completed my PhD in 2008, which was in the area of computer science with a particular focus on machine learning. And the goal of my PhD work was building technologies to support children on the autism spectrum, to have stronger and better social interactions. And the approach that I was taking for it was through storytelling, because often for children's learning how to navigate social interactions is very much influenced by the hundreds of stories that we get to hear from our parents, our teachers, the ones we read. And it was really leveraging that research that, if we can help children on the autism spectrum through storytelling better understand how people interact in social settings, whether it is through the words they say, but also in the way they express their often messy but deeply felt emotions that none of us are particularly good at expressing in words, but we are very good at showing it through our voice, our tone, the speed at which we speak. Our voice conveys so much information, not just about what we explicitly want, but what we deeply feel about what we are saying. And often with children on the spectrum, that is one of the difficult things for them to understand and hence be able to respond to. And my goal for my PhD was building technologies that can enable them to better understand this. And I was, using machine learning in order to generate emotional and expressive voices that may appear in a children's story. So this was why this was so critical, and why I really brought this up was to kind of highlight two threads. The first is that generative AI that we are surrounded by today, it's at our fingertips, being able to generate text, pictures, voices, it is literally push of a button today. But less than 2 decades ago, 2008, right? This was new enough, innovative enough, and difficult enough that it used to be the subject of PhD theses, right? So it kind of highlights two things for me. One, how in 18 years, the landscape of the artificial intelligence field has really shifted, but also that this thing that we all feel like came out of nowhere, it has been in the works for at least 2 decades and probably even longer, right? So that was one thing about, how AI has been part of my journey in my career from the very beginning. And the second is actually that focus on children. My PhD thesis was developing child-directed technologies with a goal to empower, enable, and educate. And that has also been a continuous thread of work that has been either my day job or my side hustle over the last 2 decades. So, anyways, after my PhD, I worked as an industrial researcher. As you so kindly presented in my bio, I had the opportunity to work at AT&T Research right after my PhD, where again, my work was very much focused on accessibility and child-directed applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And funnily enough, my first project on the first day of my job was supporting language model development. Back then, it wasn't large language
Right.
models, they were tiny language models. But once again, the same idea, the field of language models is more than 2 decades old. People have been chipping away at it, working at it, figuring out how to make it better. To the language models that now sit on, chips everywhere. How do we get it as close to what happens in a person's mind? So the work for it has been continuing. So after AT&T, I worked at a startup, at Affectiva, where once again, my work was in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning, but its applications were both educational, but also for health and well-being within semi-autonomous and autonomous vehicles, building technologies that can make driving a safer experience, a better experience for people who are both inside the vehicle and people outside the vehicle. And during these years, while my work wasn't explicitly in education, a thing that I love to do, sort of on the side, was teaching young people about this emerging field of machine learning and artificial intelligence. That was, I will call, my side hustle. I love to do it. I love to work in formal settings with interns. I have been an adjunct professor at Fordham University in New York. And then I would even informally, I was always open to meeting students who are interested in this field. So in 2020, that was a year of great change for all of us. We were all going through the pandemic, but it was also the year that the company I was at was getting ready to go through a acquisition process, and it really gave me time to stop and think and what did I want to do next. And what I really wanted to do next was, create pathways for more people, for more young people specifically, to learn about this emerging field that even in 2020, I was recognizing was getting commoditized, productized really fast, where as a researcher, I could read the tea leaves and see, I didn't know when, but I knew sometime in the upcoming 3 to 5 years, AI was going to be a field that would be a big part of our work lives and frankly, our personal lives. So that's what gave me the idea for starting SureStart and focusing on empowering students that were sitting in classrooms today with the skills around technology, AI, machine learning that would then be a, important tool in their career journey.
Well, I think you've really lived the evolution of AI over the last 2 decades. And I think you've really hit on a very hot spot right now. I mean, if you look at what's going on just in, the graduation ceremonies and all the booing that was taking place, I think that's a reaction to what you've just talked about, which is I don't think kids from K to 12 and now college age kids and kids getting out of college understand where they're going to fit in and how AI is really going to affect their work in the future. So let me ask the next question. It's certainly impacting businesses in a variety of ways, and those outcomes are very important. But let's take this discussion just a step further to address the who and how work will get done with AI in the future. What will the new AI era workforce look like, and what skills will be needed for that future? I think that's kind of the question that those kids were booing, in essence. What do I need to do in the future, and how am I going to fit in? And by God, I can't get a job right now. How am I going to get a job in the future if AI is taking away all those jobs? So, talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, I will start by addressing the booing. And I'll say it comes from fear and uncertainty, and the fact that there's always been a mismatch in the pace of industry and education, and with good reason, right? With industry, it's like, how do we become more productive? How do we solve more problems? How do we maximize the impact of the work that is happening within a company or an organization? Within education, the reason, adoption of new ideas is a little slower is because the most vulnerable amongst us, our kids, are on the receiving end of decisions that adults are making. So it makes sense that decisions are made in a careful, cautious way with limited experimentation, with lots of guardrails, which means it is natural for there to be a difference in the pace at which companies are moving and the pace at which education is moving. And frankly, so far, that has not been detrimental because the half-life of our skills has roughly been 30 years. Like what you learn in school and then college, frankly, gets you through most of your work life. But now the latest research shows that the half-life of our skills has gone from 30 years to 6 years, which means everything you and I know today by 2031, 50% may not be needed. Like we better fill that with some new skills. And this is where the mismatch in the pace at which education is training young people and the pace at which companies are moving, that pace has now become a problem, right? And this is why within workplaces, based on, like surveys that are being done by large global organizations like the World Economic Forum, by our Federal Reserve, as well as other bodies, shows that companies are expecting that in the next 12 to 18 months, the workforce, especially the entry level workforce, is going to go from being a pyramid to more like a diamond, where the entry-level roles will be conducted within hybrid teams of humans and AI agents, which means there are fewer roles for humans to be in. So young people are clearly reacting to that, and they're also seeing their own lived experience. While there actually has not been, like the latest reports from economists show that there actually has not been a reduction in the total number of jobs. That has kept pace with what has been predicted. But what has happened is that the number of entry-level jobs have reduced because now AI can do a lot of those entry-level tasks that used to be done by humans. So I think that's the thing that young people are reacting to,
Okay.
is that they are having a harder time finding those jobs for which they have been trained at university. And it's the kids that are the college students that are graduating between 24, 26, 27, that are sort of at the forefront of bearing the brunt of this mismatch.
So what do we need to do then to ensure that the next generation workforce is truly prepared for the future? What needs to tactically happen in K to 12 and in education per se, higher education as well, within the business and within businesses to ensure that we're all prepared, that those kids who are coming out of college, even in the future, in entry level jobs, what do we need to do to make sure that they're trained for those jobs that are now going to be available to them?
I would say there are about three things that we need to do. I'll start with the broadest and then get down to the most tactical. I think the broadest is that we need to stop operating in silos. Education, industry, government, we have each operated within our own sandboxes. I think it's the time to build, public-private partnerships, almost tripartite relationships between industry, academia, and government, where industry informs these are the skills that we will need in our young people. Education supports the development of those skills, and government provides the safeguards, but also the accountability that all of us need because nobody is good at self-policing. Doesn't matter who you are and what organization you are from. And frankly, this is where, and all of this is going to be supported by community awareness. If we as a country, we as a world have common consensus that AI can no longer be the domain of traditional technologists or computer scientists or engineers, but rather this is going to be a set of skills that's going to operate at multiple levels. And most of us who are in the workforce will need to be able to interact with it, and hence we need these skills. There needs to be common consensus that these are skills that we need, and then there needs to be action taken by these three sorts of groups of organizations, academia, industry, and government, in order to enable it. So I would say that at the highest level, we need this kind of collaboration. At, getting more tactical, this means that we need development of new courses within higher ed, or frankly, even at the high school level. And that's something that my company, SureStart, supports. That's the work we have been doing. But there's a lot of friction within academia for all the reasons I discussed slightly earlier. But I think this may be time for academia to pace up the rate at which they're adopting change. Of course, we need guardrails. It needs to be, careful experimentation, but we need to move at pace because these kids are graduating quickly. 4 years goes by fast. We cannot be so worried about all the ways it can go sideways. We have to jump in, get our hands dirty, and do it with the understanding that at the end of the kids will make mistakes. They will use tools in ways that they're not supposed to use, but we should use it as an opportunity to teach and improve their skills, but also improve their mindset. So I would say that would be my second bit of advice. And the third thing that I would say, that AI fluency needs to become table stakes across disciplines, whether you are in marketing, whether you are in healthcare, whether you are in computer science or data science. AI fluency needs to be a set of skills that every young person is being enabled within their specific domains. How do you effectively and responsibly use these tools within your jobs? So I would say
Okay,
these would be my three ways.
so let's focus one more time on those kids, those nervous kids who were
Yes.
booing at graduation. If you had one piece of advice, if they were sitting in front of you and you had one piece of advice for that young professional or student who's nervous about their future and what AI is going to bring to them, what would you tell them?
I would first tell them that I hear them. I understand it. And I'm a person who finished her PhD in 2008 at a time in a field that we were still considered to be in the winter of AI. I
Hmm.
moved to New York City the weekend before Lehman Brothers collapsed,
Oh, wow.
and there was no jobs to be found. So I resonate with their anxiety. So I hear you, I see you, I have felt the same way. But the next step after recognizing our fears is to say, okay, what do we do to overcome them? So I would say to them, learn about the thing you're afraid of. Go take a course on what is AI, what are the tools out there, and don't mistake usage for fluency. Because we use, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, that does not mean that you are AI fluent. How do you use these tools effectively and responsibly within the domains that you are interested in, the ones you are trained in. So first thing would be go learn. Go learn about the thing that you are afraid of. The second thing is also focus on, these are digital skills. AI is a digital skill, but we also need to focus on our cognitive skills and our social skills. Cognitive skills like analytical thinking, critical reasoning. If you are supposed to work with AI and you are supposed to guide how AI agents are doing the job, you have to be able to spot weak reasoning versus good reasoning. If you are supposed to delegate to AI, then you have to be clear on what is the thing that AI is going to be fast at and good at versus what you as a human are going to be far better at. So all of this requires analytical thinking. So focusing on our cognitive skills, and finally, social skills, building relationships, learning from others, asking for help, giving people help. This is a key skill, especially when the job markets tighten or they slow down. I'm reflecting back on my 2008, job search. I had moved to New York City and I didn't have a job and no one was hiring. The only way at that time I was able to look for jobs was not necessarily going online, but it was talking to lots and lots and lots of people about what they are working on and is there a overlap between my skills and what the work that was happening within their organization. So I would say that would be my advice for them.
Terrific. Well, Tanya, as often happens as we get into these kinds of great discussions, we've run out of time. I want to thank you for sharing your insights and the perspective you have today. I think your perspective on an optimistic look at what's happening with AI rather than the pessimism, which is, oh my gosh, all the jobs are going away, it is really important. And one of the biggest takeaways I've had from our conversation is that while AI will really affect the way we're working and how work gets done. The future still belongs to people. And people are, if they're willing to learn and adapt and continuously develop new skills, they'll succeed in the future. And what's happening in the future, even with the AI as a main part of it. Organizations like yours are helping ensure that the next generation is not just simply reacting to technology change, but actively shaping it. That's really important. That's a mission, and that mission is really important. One thing will impact businesses, communities, and individuals for years to come. I think how people work within that new environment is really critical, and you're playing a critical role in that. I think that's really commendable. I thank you for that.
Thank you, Ken, for having me on this podcast. And the one parting thought for your audience that I will leave you with on this note of optimism is the future is humans plus AI. It is not humans versus AI.
Good. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Well, thanks again. Performance shares a similar vision, as does Tanya, that they believe AI should be a practical, accessible, and capable of creating meaningful business outcomes in the future. That's why Performance builds custom AI agents that help organizations improve efficiency, accelerate innovation, and solve real-world business challenges, really with people in mind. To learn more about how AI can help your organization, visit performixbiz.com. That's performixbiz.com. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to Technology Today. And until next time, stay curious, stay future ready, and keep innovating.